And I am excited to invite all of you to join us for our affiliated faculty seminar series that's titled Supporting Students with IDD Through the Education Experience. Each presentation will cover the impact of the IDD population as it relates to their educational experience. World-renowned Texas A&M University faculty members will be sharing their research, knowledge, and experiences related to the topic of that month. This is an interactive 1.5-hour seminar designed to increase knowledge and awareness for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities among faculty, staff, students, and community members at Texas A&M University and beyond. The seminar is meant to promote strong dialogue about issues and information surrounding supporting students with IDD through the education experience. In doing so, the CDD affiliated faculty seminar series will work to promote positive, equitable, accepting attitudes towards people with disabilities on campus, in schools, and in the community. I'm very excited to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Julie Thompson. She is an assistant professor of special education, the Dr. Deanna and Thomas Yates Faculty Fellow, Behavioral Learning Interventions in Children's Blink Lab Director, and affiliated faculty member of the Center on Disability and Development at Texas A&M University. Her work as a classroom teacher for children with autism spectrum disorder gave her insight into the layered complexities of providing adequate education to individuals with ASD in public schools. This has guided her decision-making and emphasis on feasibility, social validity, and supporting of diverse populations. By personal research examples, explicit instruction procedures to teach academic and language skills to ethnically and linguistically diverse children with profound autism and other intellectual disabilities at home and in public school settings, both through directly examining effectiveness of instructional procedures and curriculum, as well as training parents and practitioners. Through her experience as director of the Blink Lab, she has in-depth experience in leading, guiding, and mentoring practitioners, university students, and junior colleagues in research and service activities. She has been the PI on 5 externally funded awards totaling $2.3 million and co-PI on 2 externally funded awards totaling $8.9 million. She's currently the principal investigator for Project TAP, Tackling Autism via Paraprofessional Preparation, in which she is training paraprofessionals across the state of Texas and researching the effectiveness of multi-tiered approach to providing ongoing coaching and support and recruit, prepare, retain, squared, PhD scholars and pre-service teachers, a personnel development grant to train doctoral scholars as experts in special education, teacher preparation, research, and implementation. She has 20 peer-reviewed publications, 52 peer-reviewed presentations, and she has supervised 20 doctoral graduate students. We are so excited to have Dr. Thompson here with us today. I'm going to hand the microphone over to her as she talks more about academic instruction for students with support needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Y'all, I feel exhausted just listening to all of that. What it means is that I love what I do. I make a real effort to do my best to serve individuals with disabilities across skill sets, but particularly my area of expertise is those with students with extensive support needs. Just going to peek at the chat real quick because that's what I do. Oh, thank you, Dr. Whiteside. I want to give a shout out to my friend and colleague, Tracy Akins. I saw your name on there. She worked with me as a speech language pathologist when I was a classroom teacher for children with autism in Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools. So thanks for coming. And Chin Chin, I saw you there, Dr. Chin Chin. It's nice to see you as well. There may be others that I didn't see your name on the list when it popped up, but anyway, it feels nice to see people who I know and who are involved in this. So thanks you all for your support and for coming today. And for those of you that watch this later. I appreciate that. So today I'm going to talk about academic instruction for students with extensive support needs and how to make that learning meaningful. Let's make sure I'm clicking on the right things here. But first, just a little bit about me. So here's some pictures of me. You'll see me as a classroom. This was actually pre-Charlotte-Mecklenburg. This was in another district. The pictures of me with a single child. one on a field trip to a science museum, and one in my classroom with, you'll notice, very little in it, because I'm going to talk about the fact that access to the general curriculum has really only been around consistently since 2005. My family, with my husband with the boogie board, and my son, they love the beach, they love the sun, they love the ocean. I'm wearing jeans and a long sleeve shirt to stay out of the sun, and a big old hat because I don't, but I love them. And we're in England, so it's a little more tolerable to be fully clothed on the beach there. My husband's from England. We try to go each summer. Down at the bottom is me working with paraprofessionals. I believe that was in Midland last year. I'll talk a little bit about, that was that grant. We changed the name to teaching, and we, Dr. Erin Whiteside and I are co-PIs on that grant. And we were talking about, we didn't like the word tackle. It sounds too aggressive or negative. So teaching autism is what we changed instead of tackling. So teaching about autism and preparing paraprofessionals and practitioners. So that's what I'm doing right there. And we just got an extension on our grant. If you're in the state of Texas in an ISD and you're interested in engaging in that work, let me know. I'd be happy to talk to you more about it. So what I'm going to talk about today is, first I want to be sure that we're all on the same page about who I'm talking about, okay? Then I want to talk about why access to the general curriculum is so important for individuals with extensive support needs. I want to talk about, what should you be teaching to those individuals from an academic content perspective? What are the instructional challenges of that? And then I'm just going to talk about 3 strategies. They're the 3 most common strategies that we see in academic instruction. And there's so much, and there's lots of complexities, but these are 3 strategies that, while you might not be able to walk away from this webinar and go and be able to do it perfectly, you could walk away from this webinar and give it a try, and there'd be no harm in trying. It's not harmful approaches either, okay? Then I'll just kind of give you an overview again of the big idea, why I want to talk about this, why this is my love. And we'll have an opportunity for questions at the end, but also if you have questions during the instruction, please feel free to put them in the chat. And if I don't notice, one of my colleagues here will let me know and ask the question for me, and I'm happy to answer your questions. I have a lot of videos. There may be something where I say, can we, maybe we can talk about that in a minute so that I can cover the videos, but hopefully we have plenty of time to go over what I want to go over today. Thank you for coming. All right, so who am I talking about? These individuals with extensive support needs. So these are individuals who have a developmental disability. A developmental disability typically means you were born with it. Now, it might not be apparent when you were born, or that individual was born, that they have a disability, but it typically means that it shows up, they get diagnosed at a certain period of time during childhood, okay? The other component of extensive support needs is, I'm talking about those individuals that have moderate to severe or profound intellectual disability. Now, if there are researchers in the audience or other people, we could have debates on whether I'm using the best terms. I'm using the terms that come from the Diagnostic Statistics Manual 5 to approach this. What does it mean to have moderate to severe profound intellectual disability? There are 3 domains that the DSM-5 talks about. Difficulties in conceptual understanding what's going on in your environment and in all areas. Difficulty with social interaction and understanding, so that could be language-based, it could be understanding social cues. But again, these difficulties are really impacting the everyday, day-to-day life, such that these individuals need lots of support to get through the day or to engage in their environment. And then also difficulties with practical abilities and skills. So difficulties with independence. They may be individuals that maybe aren't fully learning how to be independent in their bathroom skills, independent toileting and bathing until they're a teenager. They may still have extensive support needs and have all of those skills at age 3. It's pretty complex, okay? But it's across these domains, needing substantial support throughout the day in order to engage in the environment. Those are the individuals that I'm working with. And the majority of the videos, but not all of the videos that I'm going to show today, have individuals that meet this sort of a diagnostic criteria. Okay. I'll point out there's one individual who I don't think does, but the video is good as far as teaching you or showing you the instructional approach. Those of you that are familiar with education and educational approaches to supporting individuals with disabilities, we talk about multi-tiered interventions and support, and we say there are 3 tiers. The bottom tier, everybody gets. It's just general, what we're doing universally in our classrooms, still expecting to use research-based interventions and supports. That's tier 1. Everybody gets that. Some students still need additional support. And so about 15% of the population in the schools need some additional, more targeted approaches. They might need small group instruction. They might need focus on one academic area, or they might need focus on one letter sound pronunciation, depending on, whether it's an academic or a behavioral need. And then we talk about tier 3, and those are the students that have the greatest level of need. They're going to need intensive interventions, behaviorally and academically. When I'm talking about individuals with extensive support needs, I'm really talking about tiers 4, 5, and 6. These are those students that a lot of teachers, even in highly equipped training environments, still may need support in how best to serve them. They need even more intensive interventions and support, okay? So just to kind of give you a picture of where I'm coming from. Any questions about the who I'm talking about? So why access to the general curriculum? I'm going to talk about these items in just a minute, but I want to talk about, give some historical perspective. People have been working with individuals with disabilities for hundreds of years. As far as in the United States, there was PL 94-142, which I think was 74, but it might be 75. I always get the year wrong. It's in the 70s. It was before I was born, but just by a couple of years. So that's when legally we had to serve students with individuals with disabilities in classrooms, in schools. We had to find a way to support them. And there have been lots of movements towards teaching individuals, going from really very functional based skills to more thinking about life skills, to a little bit of moving into academics and other things. But really, in 2005, the No Child Left Behind law came out. Now, educators groan and roll their eyes typically when we talk about that. Students, if I say end of year testing, you should groan and roll your eyes, because that's where that came from, those big I mean, I took the CAT, the California Achievement Test. There was some testing before 2005, but not for everyone. One of the things about No Child Left Behind, though, was in 2005, they really meant it when they said no child, none whatsoever children should be left behind. We're going to hold schools and districts accountable for all the kids in your district. And all of a sudden, principals and educational administrators were thinking, well, I better go visit the resort over there in the trailers behind the school and see what's happening in there, because I'm going to be held accountable for what's going on in there. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that, because I taught in what we called the resort in my first year of teaching. It was a double wide trailer with 4 classrooms for students with the most severe disabilities. It was an elementary school, K-2. We served children all the way up through the ages. And so it was our students didn't even have peers of the same age. A really thoughtful person. There was a basketball court. Some of our kids eloped. The district didn't have funding to put fencing around the whole school. They put it around the basketball court, which was kind, but it looked like a cage. It was even more stigmatizing, right? And so this is sort of where I come from, and that a photo where I was sitting in the beginning was me in a classroom with nothing but furniture, because when I came to teach, I got nothing but furniture, some old books, some broken crayons. And I being me, being the hard worker and the lover of children that I am, I said, who holds the money in the district? Who do I need to make friends with? Who can I talk to about getting materials? Thankfully, I was educated in a really strong program, the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, Also, Texas A&M has a very strong undergraduate special education program. And so I kind of knew what I needed. And I was like, let me talk to the curriculum person. And they're like, you need curriculum? Yes, I need curriculum. This was in around 2005, when I was going and asking for those things. And so as new teachers don't always say it's the law, but that's what I did, and it ticked people off because they felt like I was being threatening. But I was just saying, no, my students should be fairly treated. Why access to the general curriculum? Because we don't know what students don't know. And what we found out because of this law is that children with moderate to severe, and even if they've been diagnosed as profound, might be able to learn to read. They might be able to identify numbers. They might be able to obtain a lot of academic-based skills that we hadn't seen before. We don't know what they don't know. If we don't teach them, we can't find that out. We do know that they can learn. We've known that. There's been research about what individuals can learn forever. The person that I really admire and learn from, Dr. Diane Browder, who is where a lot of this research originated, used to say, if you can find a response, I can teach a kid. And so if the individual is fully paralyzed, but they can wriggle their nose, I could probably teach them to read. You know, maybe, depends on their skill. And I'm going to say a lot of probablys and mights and maybes because we just don't know, right? But we do know we should teach them. Okay. Also, by providing broad, in-depth instruction to individuals with disabilities across all academic areas, we're building vocabulary, and that builds communicative competence. We can begin to talk about and explain things. There were stories of my colleagues in North Carolina who were teaching the Outsiders book, and the student was able to come and say, I was bullied for the first time. The way the student said it was pony boy. They just repeated that word, and the teacher, remembering that that's what they taught, they were using social skills as a component within the teaching that novel, realized the student was saying, I'm being bullied, and she worked it out that it was happening on the school bus, right? Communicative competence. She learned pony boy, she used it to advocate for herself. So some people will say, why would we teach students in middle school to read the Outsiders if they can't read? Like what? So we're reading it aloud, we're using pictures, we're doing different things, and we're providing them access to the community and the different things that they can learn. And I'm like you, I'm like, why would you ask that, right? But others would say, we only have a limited amount of time. And I'm looking at some colleagues who work in the transition area with adults, and they're going, wait a second, you know, if you spend all your time on academics, are they going to have employment skills? Are they going to be able to engage in the environment? And I would say, absolutely. I didn't put this graph in there because I just thought it was a little too much. But there's this great graph that Dr. Diane Browder talks about. She kind of draws this rectangle and she cuts it in half like that. And if you imagine this side of the rectangle is academics, and around here it's kindergarten. We're going to spend 90% of our time teaching academics in kindergarten. As we go up this triangle with these students with the most moderate and severe disabilities, we're going to continue to teach academics, because they may have special interests that we can develop, and they can learn about jobs through it. We can give them variety of instruction, which means they'll be less likely to pull your hair or punch you because they're bored. We can promote inclusion. So we're going to teach it all the way, but in kindergarten, we're at 90%. And as we go up and we get to that age 22, when they're about to age out, it's maybe 5% that is academic instruction, but it's always there, okay? And depending on their skills and abilities and what they're able to do, and we don't know what we know, we may move that pendulum depending on the supports. Although I would say I, as a young person, could have used a life skills triangle in my life with my level of intelligence and the skills that I had. So I do think we can move the pendulum this way for all children, which is where inclusion can be really helpful when we're teaching those social skills to students with developmental disabilities. You'd be surprised how many students who aren't diagnosed with a disability are learning skills themselves. I know that I did. The big one for me was this variety of instruction, which I think is really critical. So when I was trained, I was a good teacher. You know, I had good rapport with children. I had really good instruction, but I was very rule bound. I like to know what the rules are and then decide which ones I follow, let's be honest. But when I have a rule in my mind, I follow it really clearly. So if we've got an IEP goal, which is an individualized education plan, and then you have individualized goals, and a student needs to learn to order numbers 1 through 10 on a number line, I would create a single number line, and I would have numbers that they could then Velcro on if they had the physical ability to do so. And I would have them do that every day. Can you imagine going to school and every day for years? Because it could take you 8,000 trials to learn that skill if you have profound intellectual disability. You might not even learn it then. To be made to do the same number line every day. So when we see students acting aggressive, zoning out, getting over it, they don't have a variety of instruction. So the other thing that I'm going to emphasize in a minute is how I can continue to teach ordering numbers 1 through 10 across all and many different academic domains, but under the context of geometry or under the context of measurements or physics or something else. We can teach these skills so that kids can come in excited every day. Oh my gosh, when my son comes in, oh my gosh, we're learning about the phases of the moon. How many phases are there? There are 8, I don't know. I should know this, right? But there's a bunch of phases and we could order them in numerical order. What's the first phase? When we say first, second, and third, that's cardinality when we're ordering things. And that's another thing that individuals need to learn. So there's lots of opportunities to engage interests and build variety that's going to make children happier and more interested. I'm going to talk about inclusion just really quick, and then I'll get back to general curriculum. One of my favorite studies looked at the indices of happiness for students with severe and profound disabilities at school. And basically all that means was they said, okay, how do we measure happiness in someone who cannot effectively vocally communicate or say words? They smile, they giggle, they sit up, they lean forward. So we're going to write down that as a behavior, and we're going to count the number of times we see indices of happiness across the student's day. And they compared when they were in their self-contained setting with all the other children that had severe and profound disabilities. And then they looked at when they were in an inclusive setting, learning skills with their students or or with not their students, but with other students, their peers, or in like recess sort of experience. And the indices of happiness were much higher when they were included, when they were with others, when there was lots of opportunities to engage. And so the other thing about the general curriculum is we can teach it in a separate setting. And the way that schools are set up, that may be, what you're facing as a teacher at the moment. Our goal is to bring this into the classroom so that we have this integrated learning. We still may need some opportunities for individualized instruction in some aspects, but we know the indices of happiness for individuals, the individuals in that particular study. There might be some folks who say, you know what, it's too stressful for me to be around all those people. I like it quiet, right? That's okay too. But we do know that it can be good for certain individuals, and we should consider that. Did you have a question? No, okay, sorry. Sorry. What do we teach? What do we teach these individuals that I'm talking about? And again, I touched on it, but I'll just say really quickly, when that cognitive or conceptual difficulty in learning, it means that those, and don't take me on my word for the exact numbers that I'm giving, but there's a college student here, Texas A&M student in the room. She's got to be in the top 15% of her class in order to be here. So she performed really well. So when she learned to identify numbers or count, maybe mom or the classroom teacher or whoever is in your life went over it with you just a few times, and then you had it, right? And you picked up things a little bit more quickly. Maybe you didn't. I could be making an assumption, right? But typically, individuals who don't have developmental disabilities just need, depending on how hard the concept is how much studying, how much practice you need, right? But when you have conceptual difficulties, you may need thousands of times, thousands of opportunities for repeated practice with as much errorless learning as possible. Because if you make a mistake, you might get stuck on that error in order to learn, okay? So because of that, what are those most important things that we want to teach individuals with extensive support needs? We know that in order to be independent in society, counting and cardinality are going to be quite important. We need to be able to tell time. I need to be able to read the bus number if I'm catching the bus. I need to be able to count out my medication in the morning. If I'm cooking, there are things related to numbers there. I need to balance a budget, know my money, make good decisions, and not be swindled by people who might, trade a nickel for a dime. That joke that you do with the little kids. Do you want the bigger coin or the little coin, right? So counting and cardinality are important skills to learn. Another thing that's really important is comprehension, okay? What we hope is by providing that 90% of academic instruction during the school day, that they're going to learn to read. And some of them will, but not all of them. But that doesn't mean that they cannot learn to comprehend. And the way that technology is now, there's lots of automated ways that I can have a website read aloud to me. I can have a job application read aloud to me. There's lots of things. So if I have the comprehension, that's really going to help me, okay? And then vocabulary. Again, learning the meaning of words. That's really what vocabulary is about. It's not about sight words or reading words. That's a part of it, but it's about understanding the meaning of words. And then the other thing is, to the degree that you can, building in personal relevance across all of those areas. So thinking about ways that we can, if we're thinking about ratios, one area that we can think about ratios is with discounts, okay? When you go to a store. And so what is the best discount for purchasing? Where should I go and buy things? That would be personally relevant to me if I only have a set amount of money. We could use that example. For younger children, we could use personal relevance to talk about, voting on the next Fun Friday for the school, whether it's pizza night or pizza day or a dance party, right? That's really important to me. One, I'm going to get all my friends together. We're having a dance party because I don't eat a lot of cheese. And I'm going to start counting to make sure that I'm going to win because I'm also competitive, right? So again, that idea of personal relevance is really critical. I'm doing a lot of talking. We're going to see a lot of videos in a minute as well. But I think this beginning, building up is worth it. You can't read this. I can't even read it very well, although we do have a big screen here. This is a graph or a table actually that talks about how you can embed counting and cardinality across the different math concepts, okay? I'm going to provide you a document where you'll have access to this later if you want to be able to look at it right now. We're just going to look at here at a middle school domain, which says given a shape drawn on a coordinate plane. If you don't remember what that is, I'll show you in just a minute. Count to identify the ordered pairs for each of the points on the shape. So ordered pairs are X and Y. This is a coordinate plane. You can have 4 different coordinates. We're just showing one right now. And on this, we've drawn a shape. Okay, so there are lots of things that we could do with this shape. If we're working to do the ordered pairs, we have the X-axis at the bottom and we have the Y-axis that moves vertically up. And in order to work out the ordered pairs, I have to find out first what that value of X is. So I start at 0 and I count 1, okay? And now I can match 1 or find the number 1 from Velcro if I can't write, or I can write the number 1 down. So I've just one time, I've practiced, I've counted one time, I've identified the number 1, I've demonstrated my knowledge of it, I've put it on the board. And then in order to work out the coordinate for this point right here, the next thing you do is you go up on the Y-axis, 1, 2. Now I've counted 1 and 2. I can again, I could put my fingers here and move it up. Maybe I'm using a ruler or some other visual support, but there are a bunch of points on this. Every point here, I'm practicing counting, okay? So while my students in class might be working on the ordered pairs and then determining the area, I might be working on identifying my numbers. Maybe they write the ordered pairs and I go and count them out and draw the dots on the box. Lots of different ways that we can incorporate ways to just count or just identify numbers, or count and identify numbers, or have one-to-one correspondence counting. The students could be given tiles and put the tiles in each square and count the total number of squares. That's going to give them the area. Lots of opportunities for counting and cardinality in this, what seems like a bizarre middle school task. Now, how do we make that personally relevant? Well, maybe we could look at one of the activities that we came up with so a little background on me. As a graduate student, I worked in developing grade aligned maths to the national standards called the Common Core standards. Here in Texas, we don't use that. We use the TEKS, but I could do grade aligned math with the TEKS as well in exactly the same way. But my job was to first think about the big concept and then bring it to a way that we could teach it to this population, knowing what I do and my expertise in that area, and then develop these activities. So we developed an activity looking at perimeter and area. Potentially could have done it on the coordinate plane. And so we might say, okay, this is a frame, and you have a bunch of pictures that you want to put in this frame. How many pictures do you think you'll be able to fit in the frame, right? That's personally relevant. It's not necessarily a skill that's going to get them a job. Maybe one day they could become an interior decorator, or think about how furniture works in a room, or do some things that could be related to that, but it's personally relevant to them if it's pictures of people they love and they want as many of their loved ones on that photo as they can. There are ways we can begin to think about making it personally relevant. And to be honest, content experts can do even better than me. I am not a content expert. I am an instructional expert. What instructional strategies work for this population? How does this population learn, and how can we teach them? So I could get with a math content expert and they could probably tell me 15 other ways that it's going to be personally relevant. So what are some instructional challenges with this population? Paying attention, sustained effort, meaning perseverance, working a long time. If it's that difficult to learn, imagine how much energy you're putting into learning concepts. Over selectivity, that just basically means like paying attention to the things that aren't that important, right? So if I was looking around, I would say that there's 3 people that I can see that are wearing jeans. But if I had only ever practiced wearing jeans with ones that are blue, then I wouldn't say that you were wearing jeans. His jeans, those of you that can't see it, they're gray. I might be over selective in my understanding of the concept. And so there's instructional, like I said, I can get really detailed and really deep. And if you want a PhD in this area, come to me. I'd love to teach you these skills. But we can also learn some other things. But these are issues that we have. And then the language, too many instructions. I'm not just really focusing on a specific skill. I'm always talking to teachers about picking their battles. Are we teaching math right now, or are we teaching good handwriting? I think it's math right now. Good handwriting might be important. For me, it's not, thank goodness. But it could be important depending on what your position is. And we'll work on that later. But if it's math, let's focus on math. And then also getting at what they know, again, is very difficult. And just as an aside, that's another thing that I like to do. And that I'm very interested in doing is using technology like eye tracking, touching on iPads and other things like that to figure out how we can do a better job assessing individuals who cannot communicate vocally to tell us what they know. This is a bunch of videos. I'm going to start with the first corner right here. And this is, we still haven't gotten to the 3 strategies yet, and I promise we will. But I kind of wanted to give you a broad overview of the work that I specifically do. So I am very interested in those instructional strategies as well. But my most recent work has been on how do we just get kids to engage? What does good instruction look like? And one of the things that we know about good instruction is that it needs to be a level of consistency. We need to have lots of opportunities to respond and practice. If kids are busy learning, they're not busy fighting, right? They're engaged in the activities. How do we get them engaged? And so there's a form of instruction called direct instruction, which is another area that I am what is the word I'm trying to say, that I am an expert in. Now, it was interesting. I was just at and it made my heart sing with joy. I was just at a thesis for the master's program in the reading specialist here at Texas A&M. And a student was talking about the different evidence-based practices for teaching reading. And she was talking about explicit instruction. And explicit instruction means I tell you specifically the skill. Then we practice that specific skill a lot. And then once you're firm in the underpinnings of that skill, then we can get a bit more creative in the activities that we're doing. That practicing and that me telling you could be called drill and kill is the word that she used. I've heard that a lot in relation to the work that I do. And I was like, can't we make it like explain and maintain, or, you know, could we come up with something? And I'm like, it's just good teaching. Okay. The more that we can teach any individual without making lots of errors, the more they are going to be successful in learning those skills. It can feel boring to the teachers. I could fall asleep sometimes with the repetitive nature of some of my instruction, but I'll tell you what, the kids, they're dancing in their chairs. If you are keeping I'm internally falling asleep, but I'm looking excited with my students at times and I get excited because I see the joy in their faces. So these are different approaches related to that engagement. So here, this is a study that I did where teaching these students could speak. Some of them have, one of them in particular definitely would meet this criteria of moderate to severe. The others might have mild intellectual disability, but all of these students could speak. And so we were teaching them how to what we call correlate or respond in unison while teaching math. And here's what it was like. These kids one-on-one worked really well. We're trying to get them to better engage in group instruction.
I'll get 4 going, everybody. 4. Your turn. Get 4 going, everybody. Yes. Say 4.
I want to be sure you could hear that the noise there. Tracy, I think you were still here when I was doing this, maybe. I'm curious. Okay. Here's the next set of students. So after just about 3 weeks of teaching the students individually how to engage in responding, the big thing that we did was we taught them that everybody means you. So I'll either call your name or I'll say everybody, but they both mean respond. Because if you don't explicitly teach that, some students may not know. The other thing we did is you're going to hear in this next video me saying todos juntos, which means all together, because one of the students was a primary Spanish speaker. I talked to a colleague and then who said, I wonder if you use this is cultural and linguistic diversity, guys. A lot of times just feels a lot like duh, like, you know, let me just get to know you, get to know your culture, get to know how you communicate. And so they were like, well, I wonder if you just said something equivalent to everybody, if she would respond. And I was like, oh, I'll give that a try. And then I talked to a native Spanish speaker who suggested I say todos juntos, which means all together. Okay, and so that's what I was saying here.
Todos juntos, everybody. 7. Yes, 7. What is this? Todos juntos, everybody. Yes, 4. This is 4. What number, Grant?
Okay. So that is the students after I've trained just a little bit of training. And then, you know, some of these students were able to go into other settings to learn effectively through experiencing this. Now, down here is another way to actively engage. The students in this lower video have very little language, so they couldn't call out. So there's something called response cards. By the way, this instruction, I could do this with college students. And I do it with college students to teach them. You can do it at kindergarten. This is just good teaching, okay? So it's not specific to this population. And the way that we figure out what works with this population is we look around and see what's working elsewhere, and then we give it a go, okay? And so that's what I did. And with response cards, you can either have where you write the answer, or you can have it where the answer's already there. And in this case, because the students didn't have fine motor skills to write, they had 4 different answer choices, and they put a Velcro star on their answer. And the reason I did this, I was actually in the class doing research on teaching reading, and the students were, while I was doing this research, the teacher was doing this group activity, and on the left, each kid would take a turn up at the whiteboard. And the whiteboard is fun. It was an interactive whiteboard where they could go and move the answers to sort the instruction, but you're just sitting around most of the time, right? Everybody gets their turn. And if, the more kids in the class, the longer you wait. So what I love is this little guy down here, you can just see his head above the red with the triangle in it. When it wasn't his turn, he laid on the floor under his desk and took a nap. And when it was his turn, he'd get up, he was obedient. He was like, you're gonna waste my time, I'm gonna nap. It's just after lunch, I'm tired, that's what's happening. So here we go.
David, your turn.
There he is, he's getting out. Takes a while. And then he comes, okay. It's a good strategy to me. Again, we would call that a problem behavior. This child will not stay in the seat when I'm teaching. We got to fix this, or punish him, or call his mom, or whatever. And this teacher did not think that necessarily, but these are the things that happen. This is a huge issue. Well, if you watch the student now, I think he is in the blue shirt right here. You're going to see him sitting there. For him, when he came into the room, he knew which instruction was happening, because if there were cards on the table, he would sit at the desk. And if the cards weren't on the table, he'd climb under his table and start napping, okay? Because he knew it's wasting my time day or a great day. And so here's him. He's already sitting and there's no need to keep him there. Blue shirt. Look how quickly he answers. He knows it. He's a bright kid. He had that skill, and every time he got it, he loved it. The other students, it took them a while. It still wasn't perfect. It doesn't look like what it looks like when I'm in a class with children that don't have as extensive support needs, but they were having lots more opportunities to engage and many fewer problem behaviors. Here is a student, this is from North Carolina, and with this student, one of my colleagues was there watching and saw that the student was getting frustrated because she wasn't provided the right response option, okay? The idea, she was being taught area and perimeter. And at its simplest, and we did have a content expert say this was okay, but I'll take criticism if you're a content expert in math. So if I'm working on the area of this piece of paper, this 2D piece of paper, this is area, okay? This is perimeter, but be careful, because if you rub your finger around the edges, you will get a paper cut. And that's something that we learned with the students and ourselves. We've got to figure that one out. But anyway, okay, so, and for a lot of kids, we could have them in a group and say, all right, everyone, show me area, and they'd all pick it up and go, and they're proud, right? Show me perimeter. But she did not have those skills to do that. And so here she's being asked to engage in that.
Now, let's show me the area. The area is the part inside the perimeter. You're right, it is this part.
Okay, so she engages in self-injurious behavior where she will, mostly she just threatens to bite her hand, but occasionally if she gets mad enough, she'll bite her hand, right? So she's hitting at it and she's annoyed, okay? And then here, this is the preview. You can see there's a little grin. She's sitting up and more attentive. And here is her being provided the opportunity to show her knowledge in a different way.
Right.
What is this?
She's leaning in and working.
Look at my picture. Okay, now show me, what is this?
Perimeter.
You got it. What?
She got it right away, okay? So it's just a responding. All of these things, but when you're a teacher, this teacher's phenomenal. She's retired now, and I know everybody cried the day Barbara Putnam retired. She's amazing. In fact, I did my student teaching with her many, many years ago. She was a phenomenal teacher, but you're teaching a bunch of kids. We're giving her this curriculum. People are doing research, and you can't always think of all the things. And so the teacher came in and said, I'm pretty sure you've got one of those like button pushing devices. Let's try that and see if it works. So as a teacher, if one way, I mean, she doesn't speak, she does have some ability to move her hands, you would think maybe she could do it, but for her, it was too much. And so thinking about those response options. I am not going to show this video right now. If we have time later, I will. But this is another just about being explicit. So in the first video, the child is reading with his mom really clearly. And then in the next video, the mom is actually engaging in conversation. So you think he's just smart as can be, and he is a little kid. He is smart as can be. But you don't pick up on some of the areas that he has difficulties with until she starts to have dialogue with him. And a lot of parents of children with more severe disabilities don't attempt to have that dialogue. It's hard when you don't have a kid talking back to you. And so that's some work that I've done to support students. There's something in the chat here. Okay, what are these 3 strategies? I can't believe. So do we end at 3? At 3, it's 2:15. Okay, I was panicking that I thought I had 15 minutes. I have 45 minutes. We may be able to go back and watch that, but I still feel like I previewed these 3 strategies. Let's get to them. Okay, talked about why, where, gave you a little insight into some of the work I can do, and I can teach you how to do those other strategies that I showed. But these 3 strategies, but it would need a little more practice. These 3 strategies are things that you could begin to think about and try out. And then if you're interested and they're helpful, you can begin to look for more information about it. I will be, all of these webinars are being posted on the cdd.tamu.edu website. And so there will be a place there where you'll be able to link to a modified version without the videos of this PowerPoint, as well as some instructional supports and other resources to other places where you can get some good information about how to do these things. Task analysis is one strategy. You come up sometimes with these funny, fanciful words, but it's just like writing a list of the steps that it takes to do something, and then teaching those steps consistently. Imagine if you have difficulty with receptive language. I often talk about instructional format and instructional content. A task analysis is the instructional format. I'm going to set it up in as linear a way as possible, and I'm going to teach it consistently the same way every day. Okay. And if I do that, then a student who has difficulty with the social domain and the language domain and the practical domain, it means that eventually they'll learn that format, and then I can change the contents. And they're not having to work twice to figure out what is it I'm supposed to do and what is it we're learning. And unfortunately, as teachers, we're not always consistent as we should be. And so that's one area that I suggest you really look at, is thinking about, how do I teach this consistently, the same way each time? Once a kid gets it, give it a try mixing it up. They need to learn that too. But let's get them foundationally understanding. And whenever we're learning new concepts, let's try to teach it as consistent way as possible. That's task analysis. Prompting, it's not always errorless, but within the academic realm, for the most part, I suggest the use of errorless teaching. And with this, you're supporting students to get the right answer. We show them the right answer. So here we've got our in Spanish and English, which is awesome. There's a conference, Bryan College Station Success for Today and Tomorrow conference that's provided by the Center on Disability and Development. And so if I wanted the student to be able to identify the year, it's 2022, and it's going to be that way for 12 months, or not so much now, but a few more months, then I would say, and you can't really see this, but I am accurately pointing to the year 2022 on this document. This is 2022. And then I might say, show me 2022. And I'm still got my finger on it, because why should I test you that quickly if it takes a while for you to learn things? I'm gonna keep showing you and pointing to it maybe for a month in January. And then maybe after that, I might then say, show me 2022, and it be numbers and then just some words, so that it's like they can differentiate between the difference in how it looks. And then later I might put numbers together. Being really strategic, you can prompt not only through you pointing and giving them the answer, you can prompt through how you set up your materials as well. Okay. So prompting is this errorless strategy. Let's teach them without making mistakes as much as possible, and then pull back a little bit. The other thing is, and that's really critical, is that then faded over time. Okay, because there is something called learned helplessness, and that is when we over prompt individuals with extensive support needs, meaning we're prompting them all the time and we're not pulling back those supports enough for them to show us what they have learned and what they can do. Okay, is it okay if I add the transcription? Okay, so I'm gonna get distracted once or twice with it, and then I'll be fine. Okay, so that's prompting, is this idea that we're just helping them with the answers. In a general education training program, you might have heard of scaffolding, or in construction, we scaffold, we hold the building up till it's ready to take the scaffolding away, usually not until that cement and everything is settled over a period of time. Same with prompting. But we're not looking around at a building here in Rudder Tower with scaffolding on it. It stands up alone on its own because we built it properly, one step at a time, following the rules that were taught to us by the architecture, hopefully, so that it's not going to fall to the ground. That's what we want to do with these students that we're teaching. And really, again, with any student, this is not a bad strategy to support really any type of learning. And then the other is visual supports. Specifically today, you're going to see graphic organizers, but making things visual, understanding that if understanding language, so for example, someone asked for live transcription. I have a Southern accent. It can be hard to understand me, particularly if you speak a different language. I use a lot of colloquialisms. So having this up here as a visual support for you, you can focus on it. If I start using what I like to call highfalutin words, or words that are difficult and strange and specific to my area of understanding. So same thing for individuals with extensive support needs. Let's provide them visual supports to help them. Now, I'm going to be showing you some examples via videos of these three strategies. So you can see, okay, and the other thing I want to say about this is, so before 2005, we weren't doing academics, but we've been using task analysis, prompting, and visual supports for 30 or more years, okay? So what we did, and Dr. Diane Browder says this, she says, you know, when you move to a new house in a new city and it's all different, you take your furniture with you and your mom's recipes and your comfy sweater, right? These are my mom's recipes, my furniture, and my comfy sweater. And I'm taking them into the house, and it's going to make me feel a little bit comfortable in this new environment where I'm teaching academics, because I know this really well, but I got a little nervous talking about coordinate planes to you, okay? But I could do that because I know this well. And again, if you're in a school where you have colleagues who are content experts, you bring this to the table, they bring that to the table, and y'all are going to love each other, because they're going to go, oh my gosh, there's a kid I could use that for, right? And you're going to say, oh, thank goodness, I never, ever wanted to learn coordinate planes, but now I had to, okay? So here is a task analysis. You'll get a copy of this. I wrote this for the state of Texas, has some instructional supports available for teaching different things. And so this is what a task analysis, this is actually for the teacher, right? This is, we can use them to teach others to be consistent, not just for the student. So in this one, it's specifically like, okay, when we teach comprehension and when we're either reading a storybook to younger children, or we're reading a novel or some other, or a science text to younger and much older children, we can do this thing, have an anticipatory set, something related to the topic. So you'll see in a bit, I'm using prompting to teach a student vocabulary words. And then it was a high school student, a high school book called Slam. And so one day I brought the basketball. That was the anticipatory set. Basically, how do we get them interested? Then we're going to practice some vocabulary. So you're going to see me in that video practicing vocabulary with him. And then it's important to know print concepts. We were not born knowing that print went from left to right if you speak English. Obviously, other languages have very different approaches to reading. So those print concepts, we were not born, we had to teach them. So teaching, pointing to the title and the author, orienting the book, opening it. You have a young child, so you're doing this, or even your daughters are doing this with her, whether they know it or not. They'll take upside down book out of her hand, turn it right up, open the page for her and say, look, and then she'll start doing the same thing. Okay, so these are steps of a task analysis, and I'm going to show you a video, and this is actually that video where specifically this child really does not have extensive support needs, but he's adorable, and he does have some needs, and it was a good example for me to show you. This is actually work that I've been doing. I've developed with a bunch of different storybooks for preschool age children, both in English and in Spanish, training parents to incorporate these strategies to improve the home literacy environment. And my goal, which I'll be talking to you about, is beginning to start implementing that in the schools in the next school year. So here we go.
Ready?
With it.
Mommy,
By
I want
Rodrigo.
cereal. Okay, you can have cereal. Do your stuff.
Okay. This is sit.
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 These are examples of
This
non-examples
is
of the word sit.
Sit.
Sit. This is not sit.
No, sit.
Not sit.
And I'm drawing.
This is
Drawing.
sit.
Sit.
Sit. Show me the front of the book.
Can you show? Is the front? Yeah. Did it again.
This is the front of the book.
Done.
What do you wonder?
What do you wonder? No. No. Pick one.
Where?
Well. To the edge. It's gone.
Where
Where is?
is he at?
Where is he at? He's gone. Where?
Okay, so those were that task analysis of how to use story-based instruction to teach individuals with listening comprehension skills. And again, this is for younger children. And there were a couple of things that may not have been as obvious. So where it said, show me the front of the book, there was a video model showing the front of the book in addition to mom prompting him. The use of technology supports the family because they don't have to know all those instructional formats. They can just follow what's in here and support them a little bit. And so that's what we've done with this particular work that we're doing. There's a lot of actually curriculum and other things out there at well, not a lot, but more than used to be at the middle school and elementary school and a little bit at the high school, not so much at the preschool level. And so that's the area that I'm focusing on with this. And then a lot of times in reading, you teach, it's called question generation strategy or prediction questions to get their interest, have them ask a question. And then later mom's gonna read the book, the actual book. And then they'll go back and look at that prediction question, see if they can figure out what the answer is. And that's programmed in as well as some early reading, letter sounds, and other things like that. And of course, we found that for some kids, it was hard to peel the iPad away from them to read the actual book. And so for those students, we didn't use the iPad, and we went what I would say old school with Velcro and other items. So you can do this lots of different ways, but knowing that kids have interest in technology, this is the main approach that we use. So here's another task analysis. And on the left, and again, you'll get this if you can't read it now, but on the left, it's the task analysis for what the teacher needs to say. And on the right, it's what the student needs to do. So the student could be given a visual task analysis as well if they were readers about what to do. But this is what we would call a systematic scripted lesson plan that it's very consistent. And this is teaching addition, okay? You're gonna see later, well, actually you're gonna see the video of this task analysis being used, and I'll show you in more detail the graphic organizer that was used. But this is how to teach addition to students.
Here's a new equation. You got it open? I want you to put the first number on.
I just want to pause and say, she said, here's a new equation. We talked a lot about, let's use the real words, okay? Because students can learn them. Later on, at one point, a teacher is asking the student what the letter G is. It's like X plus G equals 8. And she says, you know, what is this? And the student says, variable. And the teacher says, no, it's G. Like she just missed it, you know, but what I loved was that that kid was like smarter than the teacher at that moment and said, it's a variable. So see if you see that video later. I love it.
On your set maker. Put it on there. Good looking. Try again. Look at that, that's looking for. Trace over me. Not there, but go ahead. Put the second number on there.
Wanted you to know. You know.
Wow. You didn't even use. How many erasers do you need in the first circle? Good. How many erasers do you need to put in your first circle?
Go.
Look at your equation. How many erasers do you need to put in your first circle? How many erasers do you need to put in your first circle? 4. Count for me. Put 4 up there. I want 4 erasers in my first circle. 4 erasers. Oh, I like the way Jacob is working.
The young man in the striped shirt, he said 4 plus 1 equals
You
5.
got
So
it.
we could
Show me
calculate it,
what to do to find out how many you have
can't
all
count 1, 2,
together.
so this is still
That is
different.
right, but show me what you have to do to show me that. Well, then move it to the green spot.
This is how you teach them to add the concrete representation.
Now you need to count your erasers. I'm gonna move this one to get out of your way.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh, let's count again.
1, 2,
Okay, can you write that in there?
So another thing that she just did, it's hard to see, but students sometimes have a hard time counting when things are all jumbled up. So if you put them in a line in a row, it's easier to count. Some students, even then, they have difficulties. Then you can actually like have them pick them up one at a time and put them in a cup or push them across a line as they're counting. These are all strategies and types of prompts that you can use to support the students to be able to engage in that activity. So the task analysis were those steps. So she's teaching math this way. She's going to teach subtraction. Right now, there's a circle and another circle. So 4, okay, put 4 in that circle, plus 1, put 1 in that circle, then slide them over till you get to the green, okay? And then how many do you have all together? We've got 5, okay? For subtraction, same task analysis, same format. First, they're going to write 5, and they're going to put that under there on the first circle. On the second trash can, under that trash can, they're going to write 4, and then there's a green circle again. The trash can is lower than the circle where they put it, so they put the 5 things in there, and then they have to count out and throw away into the trash can 4 of the items, and then slide what's left over into the green where the equation would go, count it, and then put the corresponding number underneath. Okay, and so that's how we came up. This was a lesson plan I created as a classroom, as a graduate student in the program. And so just thinking about how we can do these things using my comfy sweater task analysis and my grandma's recipe prompting in order to be able to do that. Here's another way to prompt a student who's learning. This is called Head Sprout early reading, and it has a lot of good research for individuals with intellectual disabilities. It is a program that's commercially available now. It was purchased by the Learning A to Z company. I do not work for them, okay? I'm not telling you to pay for them, but I am telling you that it's a good program and it was developed by experts in the field of instructional design. But some students still have difficulty. For this student, knowing what's expected, she's supposed to be pushing on the initial letter sound. She's got some fine motor issues, as well as it's like moving really quick. And so here's some prompting. She did not like to be touched, okay? ideally I would be having, helping her use her pointer finger and having her touch it, but that was not something that she would appreciate nor tolerate. And so we used a pencil to kind of indicate to her where she needed to get her finger. And that sweet sound means she got it right. You may not know what's going on there, but it's a good reading program. It's interactive and fun, and it works for most children. Okay, so we moved from task analysis into prompting. I just realized, so here I'm prompting, I'm going to be using time delay with this student. So he has already been demonstrated with me, giving him the exact right answer previously with time delay. It's a strategy where the first time you teach something, back when I was talking about 2022, I would say, show me 2022. And I have what's called a 0-second time delay, meaning that I immediately point to the answer. After he's consistently been able to demonstrate pointing to the answer independently with me giving 0-second time delay, then I wait a bit. 3 seconds, 5 seconds. Think about your student and how long it might take them to think about it and then put the answer. One of the students that I worked with in this study cracked me up because it was unfortunate when he didn't know the answer, but when he thought he knew it, he would lift his finger up as high to the sky and then put it down. It was the most adorable thing. But this young man, we're using prompting through time delay, but we're at the 3-second time delay. Did you have a question? The name of the application, it's Head Sprout Reading. If you type in Learning A to Z, that's the broad company that owns it, and it is mostly for children. Lots of teachers use it, but you can, it's a paid thing, but a lot of school systems use Learning A to Z. And so if they can add on Head Sprout, ask them to. It's good for all the kids, but certainly for those kids with intellectual disability and autism. So great question.
Okay, Jaquan, first we're gonna talk about our vocabulary word. All right. Working on this word. Remember, this says, look here, follow with your finger, drug dealer, basketball, character. What word means a person in the story? Character, good job, that was awesome. You are doing so well with that.
And I'm just gonna stop right there because we're gonna repeat that activity. I just asked him the question and he answered it before I even had to wait because he knew it. The reason I love to show this video is one, you saw him smiling and giving me a high five, and he's sitting there, he's looking. This is that story about basketball. You did hear drug dealer was a vocabulary word. You know what? It's a good one. We should know that drug dealers are people we should avoid, okay? And that we shouldn't, he is 20. I think it's age appropriate for him to know what a drug dealer is. Now, other people may have opinions on that, and you want to talk to families when you're incorporating this stuff, and you want to think about culture. There's a lot to think about, but in this case, this made a lot of sense. Even in this school, there was drug dealing going on. It was important for him to know. The other reason I want to talk about this video with this young but older man of age 20 is that 90% of the day he would lay on the floor. Or no, I mean, he just mostly laid on the floor. Sometimes he would have a water bottle. He would swipe people's water bottles, drink the water, and then he had a habit that he built. He'd put a spitball in the water bottle, and then he would go like this. And for hours, like a ticking clock, he would watch that. And his mom gave us permission for him to be in the study, and the teacher said, good luck getting him to do anything. And let me just tell you, I think that teacher loved her students, but she did not know how to teach him. So she felt discouragement and she felt some frustration. She probably displaced some of that on him, but I don't think that the teacher came into it going, I'm not teaching that kid. But if you don't have the skills or the knowledge of how to support him, and when you're teaching him, he's making lots of errors and getting frustrated. He's big. He looks like he might be shorter than me. He's 4 inches taller than me. In one video you'll see I don't notice that he's trying to kiss me. He's a big kid. He's got all the abilities that a big kid has that can make it scary. if a student is not wanting to engage with you in their behavior. And I think that teacher was afraid of him. And to be honest, I was nervous to work with him because of the impression that she gave me of him when we first started. And so, but anyway, he would see me, he would lay on the floor all day. He would see me, jump up and come with me to reading every day. Loved it, right? And again, it just shows that power of, if anything, he may not learn to read. He didn't make a ton of progress in our study, but he had enjoyment in his day. Okay, so if anything, that academic instruction for him was positive. I do want to talk about the fact too, just really quickly, that this student, and a lot of these videos are one-to-one. It's because I was involved in a lot of research in which we were doing that. These strategies can absolutely be used in group, or you can have peers doing things with the students. Peers can very quickly learn how to do time delay. It's a simple practice. You need to teach them, make sure they're consistent at it, but they could be working with him. They could be reading slam. And we did some work like that. Unfortunately, I had to pick what I thought went best with this webinar today, but I have examples of things like that as well.
Okay, Jake, first we're gonna.
Okay, and this one, this is a lot of fun. So here's another type of prompting. A lot of teachers learn this approach called I do, you do, we do, or the terms that we were initially used for it were model, lead, test. First, I'm going to show you, then I'm going to lead you, we're going to do it together, and then I'm going to see if you can do it independently. And so she is using that. She's also going to use a little bit of what we call examples and non-examples. This is, this is, this is not, which you saw in some other instruction. But this is a science lesson, and I thought it was important for you to see that. A different application.
You ready for science?
I should say too, this is Dr. Bethany Smith, who is a faculty member at Eastern Carolina State University, and her last name is not Smith anymore because she got married and I can't remember it, so I apologize. But
Look, watch. Wait, watch me. My turn. My turn. This one changed. This one changed. This one did not change. This one changed. This one did not change. Do it with me. Change.
Okay.
Good job. Change. Say change. Change. Not change. Not change. Good job.
Change.
Changed. Good. Not changed. Your turn. Touch change. This one changed. It changed shapes. Watch. Touch change. Good job.
and so she continues on like that with her doing change. I think later she teaches about dry and not dry. Typically when you're teaching a new concept, particularly a science concept or something that's a little more abstract, you teach the one concept until they're firm on it, teach something else, and then later bring in the opposite, but don't teach them interchangeably. You teach change and not change, okay? Because of their the cognitive difficulties that they have. You can build in confusion if you create too many different things that they should be maintaining at the same time.
You ready for science?
Okay, so on your left, I guess that is, that's that addition graphic organizer that we talked about. On the right, and this one took a while for me to conceptualize, is the equation graphic organizer. So, and it's color coded though. So underneath it, you'll see it says the first number, the variable, and the total. So it might be 2x equals 10, right? So if it's yellow, because when we're doing these kinds of equations, we have to repeatedly write them over and over again. And the first thing that you do with the task analysis, if you did this, is first you write the equation. Then you divide each side by the first number. Next, you can cross out the first number on the left side. And then you do the calculation, maybe with the calculator, and then you write the answer, okay? And so that's that task analysis, each step by step how you do an equation. And the color coding tells them where to put that number, because 2x equals 10, you're gonna put 2x 10, and everywhere where it's yellow, it's gonna say 2, right? Until we get x equals 10 divided by 2, and we calculate it. So this is a visual support that helps students understand how to go through writing that equation until they're able to solve for x. But we'll watch a video of a student doing this. And I believe this is the last video, so we're good for time.
Look at your worksheet. Here's another multiplication problem. I'm going to read a story. Listen. 3 groups of friends came to the bowling alley. Each group was the same size. There were 12 friends altogether. How many were in each group? Here is the equation for this problem. It says 3 times G is equal to 12. G stands for group, for groups of friends, all right? What is the first number that goes in the yellow box? 3. Good. What's the variable that goes in the blue box? X. I mean G. G. X.
We're gonna watch a little bit more of it, but the first time I watched the video, I cried because if you look at the faces of these young girls, they have developmental disabilities that you can tell. Okay, some kids have intellectual or extensive support needs and you can't tell. 2 of these young ladies have Down syndrome, and one of the other young ladies has some kind of chromosomal abnormality that is resulting in her having an intellectual disability. And before 2005, I cannot imagine going there. There were probably exceptions. I'm sure there's someone out there that was innovative in doing this, but before 2005, you would have not gone into a class of middle school students who looked like these young ladies and seen them doing an algebraic equation that is grade aligned. It's not as complex as their peers, but it's an algebraic equation that is grade aligned, and they totally can do it. So think about the job skills. I bet you guys could come up with some job skills they could do because they're able to do this, right? That they would not have had an opportunity to engage in had they not been taught these skills.
What's the variable in this story problem? Good job, Leslie.
We love to laminate.
Good work.
Erase it.
I can do it myself. You can do it yourself? All right, now write the total in the variable in the blue box. Good. And total in the purple box. Very good. All right, now listen, remember when we need to isolate the variable. We need to get the variable all by itself on the one side. Okay? Write the equation again and divide both sides by 3. Leslie, write the equation again and then divide both sides by 3. Okay. Good. Now, Kendall, good job. Now divide both sides by 3. There. 3. What are you going to do next?
3.
We're going to start with the purple box.
12. Divided by 3. Whoa. I can't figure that.
That rocks. She just did that, and she's engaged. They're doing the schoolwork, just like their peers, and that I'm proud of them. So what's the big idea here? The big idea is use the interventions you know. If there's a strategy that you know has worked when you've worked with that student before, think about how you might be able to apply that to an academic skill. And if you can't think of one, then there are some really good online training programs that are free. If you're an educator, you can get CEUs to learn how to do task analysis, prompting, and visual supports. There are some here in the state of Texas where you can do that, as well as nationally and some other programs. And I'll provide links to these resources for you in the coming week. Give me a week, if that's okay. Focus on counting and including that one-to-one correspondence, not just saying the numbers. Cardinality, which is ordering numbers. Thank you. Vocabulary and comprehension. Do teach academics. Teach more academics while they're young. Figure out what they know. Keep teaching them. Keep seeing them grow. And if you need to begin to shift focus, all those academics that they did learn, find ways to apply them in their settings that are preparing them for independence and transition to the workplace or to college or the university level or wherever it is that they end up going. And then whenever you can, put it all together and make it personally relevant. And so down here at the bottom, it says a personally relevant story plus a task analysis plus prompting plus a graphic organizer equals an academic lesson. Okay. I did not create that. That comes from the work that I did with Dr. Diane Browder and other students and individuals that worked with her. And let me just say, I may have created some lessons and done different things like this, but this is the work of many years. This is what research is, right? It's many years of repeated practice as researchers figuring out the best way to do this. There are pieces that I can feel proud of and say, I did that. But this comes from a lot of different people. And so when I do post this PowerPoint, there will be links or references so that you can know where this was originally developed and who came up with it if you want to dig deep into the research, if that's an area that you're interested in. And that's it. So I have about 6 minutes for questions. Phew, wasn't sure about the timing, but we got through it. Glad we didn't watch that video. We would have had time for that, but we're good. Any questions? No? Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. Oh, excellent, yeah. Mm-hmm. It's been a real learning experience. Mm-hmm. And clearly I can't do a number of the things you're talking about here in that context because there's 200-300 level classes of students. But so very simply, guidelines for me, some suggestions for adapting that for my one student. Sure. 300 level class to 34 students. The guidelines for you, I think one would be, I'm on the Aggie Achieve board that's working to, we're redesigning, we're thinking about these types of things. My area of expertise is both in academic supports, but also behavioral support, supporting them if you, in other areas if needed. And, but academically, this is one thing that we're going to start working on with Aggie Achieve students starting in the future, is that we will be doing some assessment so we get a sense of where their level of need is in these academic content areas. And then we'll be able to send a student to you, which is not happening right now, so I apologize, but we would then send a student with you and go, here are some strategies that should work with these students, right? And so we're getting there. In the meantime, this semester, if you want to work at the same university, I'd be happy to meet with you and you could kind of talk me through what you do and I could try to think of some ways to provide you support. I may, because I know you know this, our time is precious. I do have individuals that I'm training in this that are doctoral students. And so I may bring one along and then release them to you and then have you tell me how good they're doing. Yeah. Very, very helpful. Absolutely. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Good. Good. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I can't give any really specifics because I don't know the individual and what their level of needs are. I do, I have taught. Heather is not my advisee, but I know her and work with her. So I could also, you could email her and say, Heather, would you mind getting with Dr. Thompson and talking about the student and getting some ideas from her? If it's, we're all busy, that might be a more efficient way. And then she can come in and give you those supports, whatever works. And just broadly to all of you that are watching or that watch in the future, my email will be linked on the website where this video is, and you'll be able to email me, reach out and ask me questions. And I will do my best to point you in the right direction, or if there's a service or support or study that I'm doing, I may let you know about that. And we have had students who are doing studies. I would love it if I had a student who wanted to look at instructional support strategies at the transition level, and then I would be reaching out to you to say, hey, do you mind if they come in and do a study and that kind of thing? And we would love that. So lots of opportunities there. Looks like there might be some chats. Did you ever? No, those are just like, okay, go ahead.
I was always thinking of working with the paraprofessionals. So what are some of the ways that the paraprofessional and the physician work together in order to implement strategies?
Excellent. So in case you didn't hear, the question was, how could a paraprofessional and a teacher work together to implement some of these strategies? And that's an excellent question, because so you'll have a teacher that is teaching all the students, and you'll have a paraprofessional that hopefully is working with more than one student, right? We get into some of that learned helplessness when we have these one-on-one supports in classrooms, then that may be your reality, and that's okay. But one of the things is these free trainings on prompting. I would suggest that you do that, and also suggest that you begin to think about ways that you can step back. Paraprofessionals, I was a paraprofessional. That's one of the ways I helped pay my way through college, are wonderful people. I guess I am saying I'm wonderful, but also, you don't make a lot of pay and you love the students. And a lot of times you build a kind of parental relationship. I was going to say mothering because it's a lot of women, but there are men. You develop this parental relationship and your heart hurts and you want to help them and you don't want them to struggle. And I get that, but learning to take a step back and let them do it themselves is going to be important, but also learning how to be consistent. So thinking about if a paraprofessional is going into an inclusive setting to support students, they could come back to the special ed teacher and say, they're learning equations. Do you have any ideas on how to teach this? By the way, some of the links that I'll be giving you, all of those graphic organizers and task analyses, those are freely available through the program that I worked on. There's just a few per grade level, but it gives you a sense, it gets you started. And one of my goals is schools work with curriculum. The more curriculum we develop, we don't always love curriculum, but also a teacher shouldn't have to create everything in order to instruct all the variety of students. And so I hope that we see more curricula that are available that districts can invest in to support students. If you're interested in that, I can tell you what's out there. And again, I have helped with one curricula, but I don't make any commission off of it because I just supported it like with a one-time payment. And all the rest of the curricula that's out there is just what I know that is research-based and maybe evidence-based. So yeah, I think I went beyond your question, and we're right at time. Is there any burning questions? Anyone else have a question? Did you have some things you wanted to say to the group? Okay, so there's an evaluation that has been provided to you in the chat, and we would greatly appreciate that you give feedback on how this went. If it met your needs, if it didn't meet your needs, let me know. I hope that we get to continue this webinar series and we can get into more specifics potentially. And also, this is something that I'm willing to come out and do for districts and other places if ever you have questions or interested in receiving training. So is that it? All right, thanks very much. It was great to be a part of this. So, bye. May I